Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Life Work Podcast. My name is Wendy Kay. And today's podcast episode is kind of a special one. I usually release them on Wednesdays. I do promotions on Mondays. And if you've been keeping up, you've seen that there's been a pattern, a trend, right? There's a lot of topics around self-awareness, around building your career, finding joy and meaning in various parts of life and work. So today we're going to divert a little bit, right? I was introduced to this wonderful, powerful voice here, Alexandra Loves. And she and I connected through Dr. Tracy Adams, whom, if you remember from episode 2, she was that bundle of energy and sunshine who talked about getting what you want and women finding their worth. And she got us both in touch and said, you are both women of color. You both have a point of view and strong voices. You should get together and talk. There's been a lot of civil unrest this week. If you've been even awake for a minute, you probably would not have escaped the abundance of just all that stuff in the media and social media around the protests and both sides yelling at each other, a lot of emotions, a lot of strong feelings. And it's just been hard. It's been hard to focus. It's taken an emotional toll on a lot of people. And so I wanted to take a moment to connect with someone who has a different point of view in this. Now, Alexandra, her work is around being a spiritual guide, a spiritual coach, and a mentor, and she will tell you all about what that means. And so I want people who are listening to this to know that this is not another political take on what's happening. This is not hey, let's a discussion between two women of color on what's happening today and our point of view on what needs to be done from a political, systemic point of view. This is not what this conversation is. If that's what you're looking for, you might be disappointed. I think what we're really going to touch on more today is more about the spiritual side of what's happening to take care of you and to be healing from this process. So with that, I will let Alexandra introduce herself. Alexandra, it was really great to get connected with you through Tracy. Tell us what it means to be a spiritual coach. I will confess, I've been, in the coaching kind of world for a couple years now, but I have not met somebody who does what you do. So this is a learning moment for me. Tell us what it is that you're about.
Thank you, Wendy. Thanks for having me and providing a space for us to chat and share with people. This has been such a gentle and peaceful process, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So spiritual coaching, I too sort of started out as a coach. I was love coaching, and I was following sort of a rubric of what that looks like and how it is. And but in my own practices at home, I had practices of working with my ancestors and my own sort of spiritual workings and perceptions and concepts that I, for some reason, was not marrying with my coaching practices. Mm. And so over time, and this is the journey for a lot of people, is marrying all the best stuff together that your experiences and your skills, right? So over time, as my practices got, I don't know if stronger is the right word, but just I got more consistent with my own spiritual practices and started to, depart away from the rubric of how coaching is supposed to look like. I started marrying those two things together and realizing that, and my African elders will say this, every problem is a spiritual problem. Whether it's physical, mental, emotional, all those problems, they're spiritual problems. And when I started to see that in myself, started perceiving my life that way, and then also when I'm working with clients, whether it's about, getting over the ex or wanting to have more purpose in life or dealing with something deeply emotional, and especially now dealing with whiteness and anti-racism, it always comes back to something that needs to be addressed within spirit. I mean, after all, we are on a spiritual journey. We are spirits in human bodies having a spiritual experience. And so how I do that is through one-on-one the classic ways, through one-on-one sessions and through group classes and, working with people sometimes through meditation and prayer as well. But really what I'm doing is I'm helping people know who they are, helping them
Okay.
rebalance,
Yeah.
helping them heal, opening doors for them,
Yeah.
showing them that they have what they need. I never do it for them. I'm just helping them connect to whatever it is they need, helping them move the obstacles, seeing, perception, reflecting.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. That's like the coach consultant part of me that is curious. So when you say you're helping people kind of find who they are, that sounds very much like root stuff, right?
Yeah,
These are like, it's like root work, the roots of who you are. It's like root cause of
sure.
problems. Now, do people come to you saying that I need to work on myself and find myself, or do they usually come to you with another problem? And as you're working with them, you're finding that, there's something there are layers beneath that you need to start at and not here.
So this is my answer to that, because this is a really good question. There's this saying in Fon, which is a native language in West Africa.
Mm.
And I hope I'm pronouncing it right. If anybody sees this and I'm not, please correct me. It's Afua. Are you alive? And one of the people I worked with would say, what's alive in you? And it is the best question that I think any practitioner, whether you're doing spiritual work or coaching, can ask, because ultimately, whatever the problem is, or the array of problems that somebody wants to work on, whatever is most alive is the thing that you work on. When you start working on that, then it starts to affect all the other surrounding things, even the things that are seemingly not related.
Mm.
And so that's the way I interact with people in my sessions, is I allow whatever is alive in them, and for them to claim it. I'll never tell them, I'm not going to tell them what's alive in them. It's amazing how in some sessions you'll really be focusing in on that subject. Mm-hmm. And then in some sessions, somebody will come with this one thing, and the departure seems like you just went miles away from where they started. But that's where that's what was alive in them, that it sparked us to go into this other place. And it always comes full circle. It always ends up, whatever is alive helps whatever
that can be a really powerful question. So that kind of makes me think about the readiness of the person. Are you finding that you're getting people from all different levels of readiness, or do you need to have some level of, either self-awareness or emotional intelligence? Like, is there something people need first to do this work, or is it just come as you are?
It's come as you are, but there are layers of maturity level that matters, and self-awareness and your ability to listen and hear the truth, and self-reflect and take responsibility for yourself. And this is why I coach people on starting their online business, like people who are new coaches and newly starting either coaching or their spiritual work. And this is why I tell these people who I mentor in that, when they're opening their business, starting their work to the world, and they're letting people in, it's important to have sort of a tier system, because you'll have people who want to come work with you, who just want to work with you because they think that being association with you is going to help. And they might not want to they might not be interested in really doing work outside of like talking to you in that moment. Those people are people that I might not offer like a longer coaching, closer, deeper work program with. So when I first started, I would get sort of a mixed bag of people. As I get clearer in my message, as I sort of cut the fat, strip away the stuff that I don't need, that I was taught to say and communicate, that I don't really need to do anymore. It more has to do with sales and marketing than it has to do with really what's happening. As I started getting rid of that out of my system, I noticed that the clients, the people that come to work with me, are more ready to engage now. And
Yeah.
that looks different for everybody, but they're ready to receive. They're ready to continue on whatever happens in our session, to continue on that work for themselves later, or they come and take a class with me, or whatever is the next thing. And so I would say that more as I get clearer and more focused, so do the types of clients I get.
Yeah.
However, I'm always protected by this tiered system of anybody can come get a session with me.
Sure.
Wherever they are. If it's because they think I'm cool, then great. I mean, they're investing.
Yeah.
The session's not different for me, but they're investing in that. And then I have like a more protected area for those who are really wanting to make big transformations, really wanting to become one with their power and really know who they are. Knowing who you are, finding out who you are is sometimes terrifying. It's worth it, but it can be terrifying.
Why do you say that?
Because we're conditioned, especially in this culture. I think probably many cultures, but especially here, we're conditioned to comply and be small, and to not trust our instincts or our intuition, to lie to ourselves, to accept crumbs, especially women. I work with mostly women. I work with men as well, but mostly women. To hold the weight of the world, to not ask for what we need. And when we find out who we really are, which is powerful, which is, I believe, that the natural born leaders of this earth, when we find out that there are experiences and conditioning that are so deep that they seem impossible to move past, impossible to work with, it can be terrifying. It's like, this is what happens. And this is what happened to me. I had realizations that, I'm more, I can do more, I'm powerful. And then it was like, I just watched this mountain grow in front of me. And I was like, how am I going to become this thing that I know I am? I know it. I'm not totally embodying it. How am I going to climb this mountain?
Yeah.
And so that can be terrifying for people. But in the end, it's like the journey. That's why we concentrate a lot on the journey. We might talk about the results, but the journey is the most important part. That's where you spend most of your time, is the journey to the top of the mountain.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think I like that you pointed out that about the journey piece, because I think oftentimes people just want to skip through the journey to get to the end, when really, if you think about the goal and the journey are the one and the same, right? It's about, getting quote unquote there, wherever that is for you, realizing who you really are, or getting to that thing that you really want for your self-worth. But the way you get there is also part of that, right? Mm-hmm. No one who is a really wise person, know who they are, woke up one day and found that, right? So, and what you made sense, what you said earlier about getting clear and finding that clarity, that resonates with me, because to me, it's like, kind of like when I started, thinking about starting my own side hustle, or my own, just running with this podcast, there were so many different directions, so many things I could do, but it's like finding that focus helps you to be a little more, helps you to kind of get what you want, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, like when you got more focus, you got the kind of client who are then more ready. So this brings me to the question.
Yeah.
This week has been just devastating for many people. I mean, it started out last week, but it's just this whole week, I think I almost feel like has almost reached the peak. Fingers crossed that it doesn't get any, I don't know, that things don't blow up more. And it's taken a lot of, it's been an emotional toll on many communities. Mm-hmm. Especially, of course, for the Black communities, and then for communities who are supporting them. It's been hard to watch. It's been hard to support. It's been hard to advocate. And when I say hard to advocate, I mean like there's pressure all around, right?
Yes.
We're not sitting neutral in this. And I think even for people who are still wrestling with what's going on, there's pressure on them too, because there's a lot of cognitive dissonance for those folks. Yes. And anytime, I think, when there's these major events that happen, and especially today with the digital world, you have immediately just tens of thousands of news sources, of different perspectives that pop up. This person's right. This person's wrong. No, this person's wrong. No, this person's right. This perspective is more valid. No, actually, this perspective is more valid. And my pain is greater than yours. No, actually, my pain is greater. You don't see me. There are so many voices. And without having to discount any voice, but also needing to really focus and find that clarity in this cloud, in the storm, you being a spiritual coach, like, how would you guide people through this and gain some clarity?
So there's many ways, and the three ways I'm choosing to do it right now is one, addressing self-care. We have to remember to we just have to remember to take care of ourselves. I have friends who are out in the streets, whether it's here or you know, in the Caribbean or in West Africa. I have friends who are out on the streets doing the protests, and after we have our conversations, it's one of the first things I ask. Also, are you taking care of yourself? This is a long haul. I pray too that it doesn't have to escalate, but the oracle says we're going to be at this intensity for at least another 5 months. So, and then it'll start to calm down a little bit. After that, I don't know. But the first thing I do is self-care. And so I offer for free just 9 minutes of breathing in the morning. I do that on my Alexandra Loves Facebook page.
Wow.
The reason I do 9 minutes is because this is how long it took to execute this man on the street. We just practice gratitude, simple breathing exercise, simple 9 minutes to just concentrate on yourself. And I also do this to inspire people to pay attention to the way they're interacting with words. Words are spells. So like one of the chants that's going on right now in the protest is I can't breathe. I appreciate the intention behind it. But when you have a whole bunch of people together, this is from the spiritual perspective, a whole bunch of people together and they're saying something over and over and over again, it gains momentum. All of the entities and energy and spirits that are in agreement with what they are saying will show up. And so I understand the intention behind protest groups saying, I can't breathe. It's to have impact. It's to honor what was said during that execution. But also, it's not a message that I can align with because of what it invites in. So I'm not going to condemn those people because I understand the intention.
Sure.
And there's grace, spiritual grace with whatever deities or energy is involved. But if it's going to come from me, I want people to be breathing. They're going to keep going to the streets. They're going to use their words that have power. I want it to be, I can breathe and I can take care of myself and I can do something. Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when I'm helping people with finding out who they are, I'm always looking towards spirit and ancestors, connecting with their own spirit, who they really are, and ancestry work. And, that's not for everybody. I mean, I wish everybody would do it, but not everybody's drawn to that. However, now more than ever, especially for those who are curious, now is the time to accept a cycle of life that includes your ancestors and your divine rights that come down through your ancestors. And to do that in a way that's effective, in a way in which you can be more one with yourself, more interactive with your power and your gifts, is through ancestry work, is through spiritual working with your own spirit. So I teach a class, and that class is coming up almost exactly a month from now. It's open enrollment. That's one way I do it. And I do this with clients as well. Yeah. And the most recent way, and I'll tell you, this is something I've been doing almost my entire life. But once this man was just executed recently, I hit a crossroads in which I decided I'm not doing it for free anymore. And that is counseling white people through their challenging their whiteness and engaging with anti-racism and understanding everything surrounding these current highly charged issues. It's something that I've just always been doing and have experience and skill in. And I understand the conditioning that they were also miseducated just the way the rest of us were. Mm-hmm. And in especially the last year, but in the last 3 months, and especially the last 2 weeks, my inbox has been full of white people, sob stories, tears, what can I do? Tagging me and stuff they shouldn't be tagging me in, just full. And I was like, oh, there's a need for this. And now it's time for me to be compensated for this. Otherwise it's not sustainable. And I also know that we're all in this together. When we're talking about like the spiritual perspective, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
There are no plans to try to figure out who's what race and separate each other out and go to our own respective places to live. There's no, there is no people who are going to the new world who will be able to abolish one race. So it is necessary for some of us to bridge those gaps. It's not the work of everybody. It's work that I can do, but I want to be compensated for it. Yeah. So I started Black mentorship for white people who are ready. And they're structurally the same as my other sessions, but it has this focus. And people who are coming to these sessions are on all parts of their journey. Some are continuing education. Some have made big mistakes and they want to try to correct them. Some people have never been involved in any kind of activism about justice or oppression or read a book. And that's all are welcome if you want to work on it. Mm-hmm. So for me, if I'm talking from the place of a spiritual coach, again, it comes to at some point, we are in a war right now, and at some point that war has to end, and who's going to be left is going to be representing all sorts of groups.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of us being able to be in unity together. The only way we go into the new world and create something better is in unity. It is the only way.
And I'm making a connection when you talked about self-care, right? Mm-hmm. It's, and with your point about needing to be compensated because it's not sustainable. And also, I mean, you're a coach, you have these skills, this background, this expertise. Not everyone can, in a very effective and an articulate way, talk through some of these very nuanced topics like race and justice and, civil rights and what have you. So yeah, I completely think that that's a valid area of where you should have a coaching model, right? And also, it was just earlier this morning, I talked to a lady who was part Black, and she said, yeah, people have been asking her, especially other white friends of hers have asked her, well, what can we do? What can we do to help you? And part of her internal dialogue is, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it because I need to process, and I don't want to talk about it with you. And it's nothing personal, but it's just, it's that part of self-care that a lot of people are needing to prioritize. It's okay. I have a lot of...
The cat has to be part of everything.
I have 2 cats, so I know how it goes. But, it's part of her self-care that she's, she doesn't want to have to talk about it to people. She doesn't want to have to be the person with the answer of what to do. She's processing it. And that processing is part of her self-care. And actually, there was something that you put out a few days ago that I found really helpful. And I shared it with my sister, and it was this just really short video you put out that you said about creating boundaries, right?
Yes.
And I'm just going to quickly summarize it for people who are watching this. So in this video, what I gather from what you were saying is that there are times when it's worthwhile to try to bring awareness and educate those around you. But then there are certain situations and context, and you have to be very aware of context of who those people are and what their intention is in having certain conversations with you, whether it's about the protest, whether it's about George Floyd or anything else in your life that matters to you. You have the boundary to say, I don't want to talk about it. And people have to honor that, right? And, it sounds so basic, but it's not always intuitive for people. I think a lot of people feel like out of obligation for societal niceness or needing to be amiable, that they need to sit with whatever the person's bringing.
Yes.
And I kind of, just a real quick example.
Yes.
I look back at this, and then I just cringed because I felt like I should have stood up for myself, but I was young and I didn't really know where my power was in that situation. So I was talking to somebody from my high school, and my high school was actually very largely Chinese, but we did have a large group of white students too. And this was a white student whom I went to school with for a really long time. And he and his girlfriend, who was also white, they were there and we were just hanging out. And I did not know this girl at the time very well. It was the first time meeting her, really. And just out of nowhere, and by the way, my heritage is Chinese. My family's Chinese. So out of nowhere, she asks me why Japanese women don't want to leave the house, and if it's because of XYZ. And I just sat there thinking, I need to come up with a good answer for this question. But looking back, it's like, no, I could have, of course, when I was 18, 19, whenever that was, it was just like, I'm put on the spot. I got to answer, because somebody asked me a question. But now if somebody asked me something ludicrous like that, I would say, you probably should do your own research. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have that answer. Don't really want to talk about it. So, but yeah, that's the kind of boundary that I think, you talked about it in a very, your video was barely 2 minutes, but it was just such an important lesson, and it takes such a long time to find that inner power and that self-awareness and that willingness to take care of yourself to find that boundary.
Yeah. And this is, we're all yes. And I also, so there's one thing I want to say, and this is one of the best practices that I do for myself, is once I've dealt with the situation, for example, in that video I was talking about, this is a situation in which it was a work situation, which somebody had agreements with, right? Or contract with, meaning that for those of you who are listening, it means I'm talking about agreements and contracts. It might be somebody you work with or somebody in your family. So it's not necessarily a situation where you can just like walk away or hang up, right? You have to be there, right? And so one practice that I have, it's a self-reflective practice, is, okay, even if what has happened is absolutely not okay and completely offensive, I still, later, once I've dealt with it, I still, in my nightly kind of self-reflection, boil it down to the concept. Not all the stuff around it, not the race, not the sexism or the whatever it is. Just the concept of what happened. And what happened was somebody wanted to talk emotionally about something that I didn't want to. And I said no, and they kept going and didn't stop, right? And so one of the practices that I do for myself is, when have I done that? Do I do that? Can I do better? And so I always encourage people, when I started with that practice for myself and started noticing the things that I personally do that I'm not very proud of, or it's a conditioning that I'd like to get rid of or change, then the impact of when somebody does it to me is not as triggering. It's not something I carry with me or carry around with me. Yeah. It doesn't have as much impact, because I've done the reflection within myself, and I'm continuing to do the reflection within myself so that I can allow a flow. All these triggers, all of these triggers and all of these things that we experience that are unwanted and difficult and challenging, they're always reflections of what's going on inside. And so if I can create a flow and have my own engagements in safe places with certain events and certain behaviors and certain conditionings, then I can cycle through the pain and the fears as easily as the joy and the love and the fun.
Yeah.
Connect.
What I'm hearing is self-accountability.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just about kind of saying, okay, what's happening in the environment or what are other people doing that I need to kind of set boundaries or to self-care of, but it's,
Mhm.
well, self-care starts with looking at yourself and being self-aware. What are some patterns that you are perpetuating too? So I think that's, it sounds very responsible to me. But relating to your earlier point about discovering yourself is scary, I think this is where it's scary too. Like when I
Yep.
think about having to look at what are my blind spots, where are areas where I'm doing something to somebody that I would feel triggered if they did to me, right? Or just the area of creating paths of self accountability, that's really hard. It's like, for anybody that you probably have worked with, like when it comes to performance reviews, that happens a lot in many companies, right? How many people actually enjoy those conversations because you're
Ah,
actually sitting in those, hearing feedback from your boss. They may be good, they may be bad, right? But it's pretty
yeah.
much like holding a mirror up and then someone pointing out, well, you got a pimple there and you got a blemish over here, right?
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable.
I remember as a kid, they'd have parent-teacher conferences, which I dreaded because school was not easy for me. I was very good at the creative stuff, but when it came to history and science and math, I naturally just had aversion to it, and I could do well in those things, but only by blood, sweat, and tears. Very
Mhm.
simple things in those subjects by blood, sweat, and tears. And it was, my parents are both very academically like advanced, and so it was hard for them too, for me to
Yeah.
not be that way, right? And I remember having just this anxiety and dread when parent teacher conferences came up. And then when I was in some fifth or sixth grade, they started doing parent teacher conferences where the kids would show up with your parents. So we had to go.
Ah,
And I remember being in such dread about this
yeah.
all the time. But there was this one time when this one teacher whose class I was not doing well, and I think I had a C or something or B minus, and I wasn't doing well, and I knew the teacher hated me. I just felt it. And we went and we sat down, and I remember at that time in my life, it felt like life or death to sit in those rooms.
Mm.
And he had all the most nice, the kindest things to say about me. And he was just like, I think she really can bring her score up at least to a B plus. I think she can do, like, it was. And I remember just sitting there in shock, like, what? And so as we're comparing, this experience to the mountain, when we're looking at that mountain that is meeting yourself, it's not that you have to do a hard climb all the way up. Sometimes
Yeah.
you're going to meet with some beautiful thing, some beautiful assistance. Sometimes you're going to meet with maybe a little angel or birdie that comes and just lifts you up a little higher so you don't
Yeah.
have to do some of the summit. And,
Yeah.
it's not all, I think on first sight, meeting yourself is scary and there's scary parts, but it's not always all that way.
Yeah, I like that you bring in that there are partners along the way, right? That and to not really what I'm getting from is don't be afraid to ask for help, you know? Yeah, and
Yes.
ask for support. So I want to leave people with something a little more uplifting.
Yeah.
And not that our talk, I think, was very, not
Right.
uplifting, but,
Yeah.
just to leave on a somewhat high note, I think people are going to be curious about healing. I'm curious about healing. What does healing look like from all
Yeah.
this? And
Yeah.
healing, not just for one community, healing for everybody.
Okay. Uplifting. So, though on first sight, and though in your engagement with healing that which is causing you pain or causing a community pain, the engagement, your first engagements are going to be hard.
Yeah.
Healing is not always a healing, rebalancing is not always a pretty, as a matter of fact, it's often not a pretty process, a fun process, a welcoming process. However, when you can do it with like-minded individuals, when you can find your people, find your tribe, whatever that looks like to you, when you can find pacing that makes sense to you, and guidance, elders, godmothers, coaches, healers, when you can, community, when you can do it with people, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
And right now, if what you're looking for is to rebalance it and to reheal, find your people.
Yeah.
Now is the time to find your community. It's finding your community in and of itself is healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, this is the uplifting part. Your people are looking for you right now. They always have been, but in this accelerated charged time when the world is dying off and a new world is being birthed, everyone is looking for their people. Everyone, they're looking for you.
Mm.
And you will find them if you're open to them finding you, and you set clearly, like, I want to find this community. I want to heal with them. I want to build with them. You will find them probably quicker than you may have 2-3 years ago, because we're in accelerated times.
Yeah. What can people do to start finding their people? Like, if they're hearing this and they're thinking, I'm either curious, I want to hear more, or I'm ready to do this. Like, what's the one thing, a small step they can take?
If they want to, okay. Well, honestly, get really clear on what you stand for and what's important to you.
Mm.
Get really clear on as much of what you know of who you know you are right now, and live it.
Yeah.
You have to be a beacon you have to kind of be a lighthouse.
Yeah.
You got to look for your people, but you also have to be a lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
So they can find you. That would be the easiest thing to do right now, to just claim who you are.
Yeah.
In my own practice, if somebody came to me with that question, they went to work with me, it would be work with your spirit and your ancestors.
Yeah.
They'd be like just a little deeper than just saying what it is. It'd be do this spiritual work, because ultimately you are, and this is a message I say over and over again, we all have destiny. And by destiny, I don't mean like sword in the stone. I just mean that you're made by spirits and ancestors. You were born with purpose and nature, and you have gifts and blessings that come with that nature and purpose that help you reach your fullest potential. Mm. So within that destiny, you'll have spiritual family that is meant to help you, that's meant to embrace you and help you heal. And so that's why I'm always and forever keep going back to start working with your spirits and ancestors. Yeah. Start that work. It's the natural cycle of life. Whether you believe it or not, it's the natural cycle, is how we're made. Yeah. So that's the longer answer.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And folks, I keep referring you back to this, but I think it's more relevant now than ever. My very first episode with Kevin Bush around emotional intelligence, we did that episode because we had just fallen into a pandemic, into a lockdown, and many people were very, very stressed. And he talked a lot about starting with yourself. Take care of yourself, center yourself, do what you need so that you are not always in a reactive mode. And I am relating that to the spiritual element of what you're talking about here. So thank you so much, Alexandra. For people who want to work with you, want to know more, just curious, I want to hear more about what the ancestry work, they might be curious, like how can they reach out to you or get in touch?
Okay, you can always reach out to me on Facebook. I'm Alexandra Loves. I have an Alexandra Loves page, Loves. I also have my personal page, Alexandra Lewis. It does say Alexandra Loves on it in small letters, but also Alexandra Lewis, Lewis. I always answer DMs. It just sometimes it takes me, especially these days, it takes me a little bit more time sometimes.
Yeah.
My website is always open and running. It's alexandraloves.com. And I just opened my courses for self-improvement and spirituality called the Spiritual Foundations Library. It is a tab on my website at alexandraloves.com. It's not hard to find. And the class that I'm teaching is coming up on July 5th, is working with your ancestors in spirit. And we do things like creating these relationships and building altars and understanding who you really are in your spirit and claiming your divine rights and finding your spiritual family and all these things. The enrollment is ongoing. It's a class that will always be there. But the cool thing about this class is starting July 5th, there will be a series of live classes that go with the course where people can come and ask me questions. And so I want to fill that class to at least 50 people. It's starting to fill up now. I think I have room for about 40 more, and we're a month away. Everybody signs up in the last 2 weeks. So we're about a month away. And the early bird is going on until June 14th. That is the best way that is the best way to come work with me, especially I want to be real about this. Some of us are on a budget, right? So this course is, you're getting a lot of material and access to work closely with me, and you can split pay. You know, you can split the payments up. If you want to do deep one-on-one work, my one-on-one sessions are online. I do deep dive sessions, and we really get into it, and we do Zoom recording, so you can keep the recording and keep serving you for months on. But that's the best way. My website, Alexandra Loves, or seek me out on Facebook.
Great. Thank you so much. And folks, all the contact information and links are around this page. I would love to hear your thoughts. And because this episode is around healing, I would encourage you all to share thoughts that are constructive. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything, but let's keep some of the criticisms out for this one, because this one really is my intention to help people process through this in a way that's constructive, in a way that's helpful for each other. And really, this is about self-care. So as you think about what you need for yourself, think about how your words can impact others as well. Again, drop me a note privately too if you have some other thoughts. But again, please reach out to Alexandra if you want to explore more of the spiritual side of this journey. And thank you so much again. And guys, people, women, stay tuned and subscribe. All right.
Thank you, Wendy.